Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, who is the Lord of the Bling? All right. It was said in the folklore in about 1282 in the town of Hamlin, they were suffering from this major rat infestation. And a man dressed in colorful garments just appeared, claiming to be a rat catcher. He promised the townsmen a solution for the problem of rats. The townsmen agreed, said, if you can remove the rats, we will pay you. Well, the man accepted, and thus he played his musical pipe and lured the rats with a song into a nearby river where all of them drowned. Despite the success, the people reneged on their promise and refused to pay the rat catcher. That man left town angry and returned sometime later seeking for revenge. While the parents were in church, the Pied Piper struck again, this time attracting the children of Hamlin, and all the children followed him with the music and followed him out of town where they were lured in a cave and never to be seen again. Well, right now, I believe as we lift our hands to Jesus and we give God the glory, do all this church stuff, I believe that the Pied Piper, also known as Satan, also known as Lucifer, is luring our children into a lifestyle that encourages them to steal, kill, and destroy. In case you have forgotten, Lucifer was the chief musician for God, but instead of giving God the glory, he decided he wanted the glory, keep it for himself. And since then, he's been corrupting our music and luring our children straight to hell. Listen, in case you did not know, our children are dying at alarming rates. Teen pregnancies are out of control. Single-parent households are now a norm. And homosexuality, cursing, shooting, and killing, we watch that on the 6 o'clock news like it doesn't even bother us. But watch this. God gave Amos a word, a prophet. And he told Amos to tell the children of Israel two things: get your house in order, and that I'm coming to judge the nation. But you see, we're stuck in this modern day prophets, Profits, and you know, one of the ones that say name it and claim it and your blessings coming, but that's not the kind of prophet God utilized to get his word across. He used those to tell him to get your house in order and we're coming to judge. But right now, as I'm standing here, I'm going to preach the unadulterated, infallible, inerrant word of God, whether no one likes it or not. Listen, here in verse 4, God said, you lie on beds inland with ivy, and you lounge on your couches. God was mad at Israel because they envied what the rich pagans wanted. Matter of fact, what the rich pagans have and they didn't. In other words, young people, we envy what people on MTV Cribs got. We envy what BT and 106 Parks got. Lifestyles and the rich and famous. Rate My Space, Next Top Model, College Hill. We look at that and we say to ourselves, this is what I want. But that is not what God wanted us to have. Because you see what he's telling the people of Israel in Amos. You wanted to lay on beds inland with ivy, but you wanted to also lounge on the couches. Well, one thing is that this stuff that was in the things that the pagans have, these were rich things. These were things that they killed for to obtain. And God was saying, don't look at the objectivity. Don't look at the stuff that God didn't give us, but look at the stuff that God promised us through the word. And I believe that our children are not looking at that because we're not feeding them what they're supposed to be looking at, but BT, MTV, and College Hill is. So watch this. Verse 4, it says you dine on choice lambs and fatted calves. Now these choice lambs and fatted calves were specifically raised for a sacrificial offering to God, yet they ate the best and gave God the leftovers. In other words, they raised this calf without spot or blemish, and they needed to grow him up so when there was sin in town or the sin of the family came, especially through the husband, they'd take that lamb or they'd take that choice lamb and then they'll sacrifice it to God. But watch this. They had nothing to sacrifice, young people. youth, we take our paycheck, and instead of tithing and offering, we buy $100 clothes. We buy gym shoes that's $100. We buy apple bottoms, Sean John, baby fat, Guess. And then when it comes to offering on Sunday, it's $2 in the plate. Instead of, just like the children of Israel, instead of first giving God his due, we get what we want, then we expect to get the blessing from God, but then when God comes around, we give him $2 and expect him to bless us. But watch this. I don't blame this generation too much because we learned it from the previous generation. And the generation before that learned it from the previous generation. And then the generation from there learned it from the previous. Listen, we tell our children, man, wear your Sunday's best. There ain't nothing wrong with looking good. But then we'll spend all this money on suits and ties. And then the moment service come, we give them $1 or a quarter. And Pastor tell you back in Mahalia Jackson days, they used to offer $1. Now they still offering years later the same dollar. And as inflation is going up, you would think that the price would go up also. But this ain't my church, and I can't preach on that. So, but what I'm saying is we're teaching our children to be prostitutes and pimps right now, doing the things of telling them, go get yours, because previously I got mine. But one thing we got to understand, I was just studying the Bible, and this is a little excursus. One thing I learned was that the first generational church was called, that was the first generation. But what happened was they always relied on Jesus because they were the first generational church. So when they had meetings, it wasn't to see how much money the church would get. It was, are we reflecting the things that God called us to do so we'll look back at what Christ has died for? So then the second generation, they'll go back to the first generation and to make sure that they're doing what the first generation and Christ was doing and commission us to go out. Then the third generation went back to the second generation, went back to the first generation to make sure they model Christ. But as we're in the 20th century, we're not looking back at the things that Christ told us. We're looking back at the things that the last generation told us and the generation previously. But watch this. There's a disconnect. So now we're not really talking about God. We're just doing things that we believe is scriptural and biblical based, but we're not giving God his glory. Here in verse 5, it says, you strum away on your harps like David and improvise on musical instruments. Listen, people, music was designed for one purpose. That was to give God, the creator, glory. It was no other reason. It was for one purpose. The pagans decided they wanted their own music designed to worship sin. And here I'm going to give you an instance. Lil Wayne. Okay, Lil Mama had a swag like mine, even wear her hair down to her back like mine. I make her feel good when the wrong like lying. Man, she ain't never had a love like mine. And then so on and so forth. Nothing about God, had nothing to do about God. But watch this. I know parents, y'all looking at crazy. But listen, I got something for you too. I grew up listening to Atlantic Star's Secret Lovers because of y'all. Woo! Here, listen, so young people, if you don't know, I'm going to give you the lyrics right now. Here we are, the two of us together, talking this crazy chance to be all alone. We all both know that we shouldn't be together because if they found out, it can mess up both our happy homes. I hate to think about us meeting together. As soon as I looked at you, it would show on my face. Then they'll know we've been loving each other. They can't never find out, oh no, it'll leave a trace. What I'm trying to say is, parents, I hear it all the time. We always want to blame the youth, but this is the stuff that we presented to them. And then when we get in church, we expect them to do the things of God. When in our household, we ain't playing nothing that resembles God. So here it is. Music today encourages us to have premarital sex. Adulterous affairs are okay. We don't even call it adultery. We just call it affairs. And back in the day, in the biblical term, affairs was something you would have with Christ. I'm having an affair. We're talking, we're discussing things. But we want to downplay saying adultery. We won't call it sin. We just call it, it's just something that's a secret, like secret lovers. Well, here it is. Another thing is we're shooting one another is cool. We look at grand theft auto. We have all this stuff, and we allow it in our household. This is what we have in our household. I'm not even talking about the secular people. I'm talking about the saints of God. We have this in our household while the saints continue to do what is best. Worship within the four walls.